Welcome to the Turner's Flip Side. Today we're going to have like a conversation and spread some wisdom. Join us. Before we take off to the airport to travel, I wanted to share this conversation that my girlfriend and I had the other day. It's pretty interesting. It has some merit, some words of wisdom, and I think you might enjoy it. Now, it's a little lengthy, but it's pretty cool. Kind of, there's a little comedy, some real truth that's shared about our coming up and this generation and how she contributes to this generation, particularly the teen group. Take a look. Okay, so I'm here today with one of my really long time good friends, Mary Mitchell. Hey, Mary.
Hi,
It's
Ada.
so good to see you again. I'm coming, of course, to you from Mexico, but you are are you still you're in Atlanta, right?
Yeah, Decatur, Georgia.
Decatur.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we've done so many when I was in Atlanta, we just kind of connected and we did so many really cool things together. I remember when I came to your first kind of it was like a teen mother event
Yeah.
and you had it at the library. That was just fabulous and well organized. So, anyway, I just want to catch up and I want to have like a real conversation, Mary. We're gonna keep it real because there is so much going on in the world today, and
Yeah.
like people are waking up, but there's still a lot of people that are asleep from our vantage point. So what I'd like to do is kind of we're gonna bring in like our generation because like we're baby boomers and we were one of the more successful generations of people that came up like with great jobs and there was so much opened up to us. And so I want to get into why was that, first of all, and then compared to what's happening today, what in the world is happening with this generation? And I want like I don't want to say it like I'm diminishing the generation or like I'm critiquing it. It's just something that is like it feels unique and odd to us as a generation because we were hard workers and whatever we wanted or we thought we could achieve, we did what? We achieved it.
Yeah.
So, first of all, I just
Yeah.
want to get into, I want you to tell me a little bit. Let's just give me a little bit about your background, what you're passionate about. What have you been up to?
Well, I've been working with the teens. Well, it started out as a teen project,
Hmm.
but when the mothers come to see what I'm talking about, I had them say, "Oh, I want to do this as well." Once they was finding out what the project was really about. And it's called Self Leadership. And I came up with that because there were, the conversations were different. And it's like everybody was into looking at themselves through someone else's eyes
Hmm.
and conversation about who they are rather than taking over their lives and say, well, I can be who I want to be.
When you say everybody, now we're talking about teens. Now, is it just teenagers in general, or boys and girls? Kind of what group were
Well,
you working with?
I started out doing teen mothers,
Mm,
okay? And working with them to have them see that they could still create a life for
mm,
themselves that'll work for them
mm,
and the child.
mm, mm,
And what happened with that is, of course, The girls were young, so the mothers would come and see what I'm all about. So when the mothers would come, I would just tell them, okay, so I talk to them about their self integrity, their self commitment, and their self empowerment. And once they sit through it, I had a couple of mothers say, well, I want to come back as well. So I said, okay. And then I had one group where the young ladies came, and then they said, well, I want my boyfriend to come and hear what you have to say as well.
Mm.
So I said, okay, and that's how it got integrated with just going from teen mothers to others being added to the program. Yeah.
So tell me, I mean, what had you decide to start working with teen mothers? What was the motivation? Was there something that you saw that wasn't that wasn't happening, something specific that really got you passionate about wanting to help and support these teen mothers?
Okay, well, I can say when I was a teen mother, now I got married, but I was still a teen mother. I was 18.
Mm,
I was 17 when I got pregnant. I was 18 when I had my son. So I had a different mindset about what I could do. And it seems as if the young ladies now didn't have that. Now, I was married, but that didn't mean I had the support that I needed. So my thing was to go out and get a great job, and just in case I had to raise my two children, which I had. Um, so that's what I did. And I
hmm
looked at it from a point of view of what if, like these young ladies, they weren't actually looking at it like that. I'll give you one example. One young lady came in and she was all upset. She had just graduated from high school.
hmm
And the pandemic, I'm saying the pandemic was starting.
hmm
So I asked her, I said, okay, so what's going on? Well, I just had a baby, but she actually brought her little friend too. She was still pregnant. They both were
hmm
teenagers. She said, I just graduated and I don't think my dad is going to pay for me to go to college. I said, okay, so that's something you made up. Do you know that? She said, no, that's just the way I'm thinking. I say, well, why don't you go home? That's all I said. Why don't you go home, have a conversation with the dad, come back next week and tell me how it turned out? She said, okay, yes, ma'am. So she came back 7 days later, the next Tuesday. She had on earphones, she had a new computer, and she said, guess what, Miss Mary? I said, what? My dad enrolled me into college. And so the reason why I started this program, because a lot of stuff is what we think.
mm
And you don't ever go and say, well, what do you think? Like she had never gone to her dad to say, Daddy, I know I did, la la. Are you still going to let me go to college or pay for me to go to school? So
mm.
people, so that's the way a lot of us live. We make it up what we think the other person think, and we live our lives out of that, and they have no idea. So
You know what? That is
I said,
so
okay,
true. That's true.
yeah,
Because you know what? There was something that I learned. Actually, it kind of came from an interaction with my daughter, but
yeah,
but it was a concept that I learned in a program, which
yeah,
turned out to be a pretty good program for us. And I'm just gonna say it. I mean, I'm not, it's they taught it to us, and it was called Already Always Listening. And I was talking to my daughter one day and I said, well, I can't remember what the conversation was about, but it was something like, well, I'm going to tell you this, but I already know what you're going to say. And she stopped me in my tracks and said, you don't know what I'm going to say, Mom. I mean, you have this already always listening. And I'm like, what? And then we got into a conversation about what that meant. Is like we've
Yeah.
had some experiences in the past with them, maybe more than one, and we get a certain response. And then we get programmed to feel like that's the way it's going to be. Or it doesn't even have to be with that person. It could just, we could be observing something and we could see that that is the kind of response, say, like what you said about the father and the daughter. The father just said, well, my dad is probably going to be really upset. I had this baby, whatever. So he's not going to support
Yeah.
me without even checking in. So that's a brilliant, brilliant example of that concept that we learned.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and that's something that once people realize that that's their point of view, because you haven't even said anything to the other person,
Hmm.
then they start to thinking outside of the box. Yeah,
Sorry
and
about that.
so the first part of my program is self integrity.
Hmm.
And that's to treat yourself the way you want others to treat you,
Hmm.
not the way, not get caught up with what or how they want to treat you, but you keep it to yourself that if I'm treated this way or I'm treated that way, I have to choose for myself
Hmm.
who I want to be, how I want to be, and when I want to be.
Gotcha.
And then yeah. So
But Mary, on that
yeah.
point, on that
Mm-hmm.
point, let's get into
Yeah.
that. So you and I, we have my, I mean, I
Yeah.
was born knowing you can't tell me what to do. I have knowledge and I know that I can do whatever it is I choose to do.
Yeah.
Now, we were born in a system that wants to suppress that, and they do. But there's something in some people that just that that we get the suppression through various means, and we're not going to get into all that political religion. I don't want to get into that conversation
Yeah.
because another can of worms, but there are systems that suppress that. But then you have people like me and you and I think that's why we connected so quickly because, like we recognize something in each other. And there's this thing about when the pupil is ready, the teacher appears and like attracts like. So we just kind of knew without even discussing it. This is really the
Yeah.
first time like this deep discussion, but there's something about when you approach a certain person, you kind of feel their spirit, you're in touch with their spirit. But so for us, like we had that coming up. We just questioned and resisted and like that doesn't sound right and that doesn't feel right. So we were in touch with our spirit, with our true selves. But the system suppresses people. So for these kids, people, it's not just children, I mean adults,
Yeah.
talk,
Mm-hmm.
how you approach. How do you know, it's I think it's a like a repetitive thing, would you say, to get these kids to know that they can come out on the other side unscathed, but they just have to believe in themselves. How do you approach that?
Okay. So the first thing I talk about when I talk to the group, because right now it's male, female, and mothers and whomever,
Mhm.
I tell them to treat themselves the way they want others to treat them. And when that's self-integrity. It's like if you tell somebody you're going to do something and you find out you can't, you don't just not do it or not
Okay.
say anything. You actually let that person know, okay, I said I was going to be there at 2 o'clock. Now something has happened, and so I might be 30 minutes late. I said, well, you treat people like you want people to treat you, and that's
That
your
okay, so
integrity.
that's the golden rule. So
Yeah,
I hear that.
yeah.
But in your training, how do you get people to start doing that? Is it through repetition, or try it and see what happens, see how you come out on the other side? How do you get them to really hone in on that concept? Because we're taught that treat others as you would want to be treated. That's sort of a
Yeah,
golden rule.
yeah, and I it's not as hard as people might think,
Mhm.
because I had to go and keep my grandson for a week while my daughter and her husband go to New York because he was in the service.
Mhm.
So I asked him. I said it was in the summertime. I said, okay, so you can play with your friends. I say, but what time are you going to come in from playing with your friends? So he said, I'll be in at 8 o'clock. So he thought it was saying something because he was about 10, 8 and 12. And I said, oh, okay, great. And then the first day he came home, I think it was like 5 after. And so I said, okay, come on. We had to have a conversation. And I said, okay. So he looked at me. I said, you aren't in any trouble. We're just going to have a conversation. I
Mhm.
said, okay, so you said you were going to be here at 8. I said, what time is it? He said, it's 8:10. I say, so I can't depend on your word
Mhm.
because you came in at 18 and you said 8 o'clock. So your
Mhm.
integrity with me is out. I said, do you know what integrity means? I said, self-integrity means. He said, no, ma'am. I say, it means that when you tell a person something, you are the one that's supposed to come back and tell them, I'm not going to be in at 8 gram. I'm going to be in at 8:10. And I say to and see if I will coincide with what you have just chosen to do.
Mhm.
And then I say, so now I can't believe what you tell me because you didn't do what you said. And so he looks sad. And so I say, so do you understand? Yes, Graham. I said, okay. So what time are you going to come in the rest of the week? He said, I'm going to be there at 8. I said, okay. So he came in 7:55 the 4 more days. So
Mhm.
he got, and he's a little 8-year-old. He's a kid. But that stuck with him all the way. Now he's 21, graduated from college with 2 degrees
Mhm.
because he didn't know he couldn't. Because what I say here, I don't just teach it, I talk it. So I talk it to him. The self-integrity, the self-commitment, and the self-empowerment. And I taught
Mhm.
that to him. And
Mhm.
it's not like I have him in a crowd or have him in the room. I just, whenever I see the opportunity to talk to anyone about these 3 ways of being, I do. Because to me, you're doing it for yourself.
Yeah.
And if you
But
can keep your own integrity and commitment and empowerment, then you'll be happy.
so you know what, Mary? I hear that. And there's something for me. I can't pinpoint what was the thing. My father used to have discussions with me like that. But there was something like you said, like talking to your grandson. There was this thing about being my word. Like we
Yeah,
don't have anything else but our word. And if
yeah,
we can't keep our word with people, then how do we expect for anyone to invite us into their lives? No integrity whatsoever. And I had a similar experience. I was a teenager and went over to a friend's house and I lied to my father about what I was going to be doing. I told him I was going to be at my friend's, but her brother was a guy that I liked. And I actually went over to her house and then went to the movies with him. And I wasn't supposed to date until I was 16. And it was like 2 weeks from my birthday. And
yeah,
so I told him I was going to go visit my girlfriend, but I went to the movies with her brother. And my dad just, I don't think he was checking up on me. He just called her. to, and she told him, well, she's not here. She's at the movies with my brother. So when I got home, I had a key to get in, but when I got home, my father had locked the screen. So I had to ring the doorbell to get in. And then when I came in, he didn't say a word, Mary. He just let me in. But, I had this overwhelming feeling of guilt because I knew that I had done something and I had a really great relationship with my father. And it just killed me that I had tainted that relationship. He never said a word. He just said, go on, go to bed. And about 4 days after that event, I couldn't take it anymore. I just went to him and said, are we going to talk about this? I mean, I lied. You haven't said anything. Did you tell mother? He didn't even tell my mom. You know what he said to me? I said, are you going to punish me or anything? He said, you know what? I don't need to punish you. You have punished yourself for 4 days worrying about what I thought. He said, I don't tolerate lies. I'm not going to. What you did was you made me not trust you. And that cut me like a knife. And from that point on, I never lied to him or anybody else again, really. Because the way that made me feel, it diminished me. It made me feel this big. And so, you know, I guess listening to you, what I'm hearing is that you don't have to have a long, drawn out, detailed conversation about a situation. You pinpoint the thing, like your integrity is everything. And without that, people don't trust you. And so you created that, not the world. You created that by not being your word. So that's a good example. I was just kind of running through my head, like if the audience is listening to this, yeah, yeah, we say that all the time, treat people like you want to be treated. But people don't do that until it's something that really impacts them. So I kind of wanted to hear an example from you of how do you get these teenagers to listen? Because they don't listen, they already have all the answers.
Yeah, and that was an 8-year-old. So if I caught him at 8 years old, he was all right the rest
You
of
know?
the time.
Yeah.
And kids, I mean, really, young people, this is the same grandson, really young people take what you say and run with it. So he was a great football player.
Mm-hmm.
And he was so good until he had finished all of his work, when the pandemic, he just went ahead and did everything and kind of graduated himself. So he so he didn't have to go back to that school, but he played football. He loved to play football. And so they let him into another school just to play football. And he said, Graham, I said, what? He said, I don't feel right. I said, why not? He said, because I don't know any of the teachers because I didn't go to that school. He said, the only thing I played was football, but they was one that gave him his diploma. Now he created that himself.
Mm.
And yeah, so, he didn't know that he could do something like that.
Mm.
So he was the one that catch the football and make the touchdown.
Mm.
So that school hadn't had a touchdown in a little while. So I told him, I said, okay, so all you have to do is catch the football. I said, you don't have to look for it. It's going to find you. He believed it. And he made the first touchdown, and the TV people were out there, and they were just talking about Brown. Look at Brown. Look at him catch the ball. See, people don't know, but that's how these kids get messed up in their mind because of what you say, because they believe what you say. So if you say something to them, say something that's going to be positive, say something that's going to support them in what it is they're up to.
Girl, let me
They,
tell you, that is the
yeah,
truth.
smoking and all that. Yeah, he
I
believed
used
that.
to tell my daughters,
Mhm,
do or be anything
mhm,
want to be. And I remember when my middle daughter Kendall was in a like a little race, a little
yeah.
they like a little running thing. And, I said to her, I said, now listen, just have no fear. You got this. You are strong. You're going to just say, I'm going to win this. You can win this. And then I made a little protein drink and I was like, now I'm going to give you this protein drink. Drink it up. I want you to have the energy that you need, but you got this. You can, just instilling that positivity in her. That little 8-year-old ran that race and won it. So it's like, you're right. What you
Yeah.
say, they hear it. And we do have to be careful with our words. And I'm just going to one, Mary, to admit that I think that parents are their worst. We are our worst critics because if we make a mistake, if we didn't know, we don't know what we don't know, we don't know, then when
Exactly.
we get out, we be like beating ourselves up. And so later on in life, I realized that I had some positive aspects to my mothering, but I also, was brought up by my mother was like 15 when she had me. And, so she wasn't as skilled as, like I required to advance to where I am now. But, and,
Yeah.
you children they learn what they live, right? I had an aspect where I was when my girls got to be teenagers, very strict, very hard on them. So I had a yin and a yang. I love them. Put them in sports and all that, but I didn't tolerate anything beyond what I thought would make them successful. So, when they got older, what I realized is I had been, it was too hard on them and really kind of suppressed their ability to express and be. And so, we had to go through therapy and to get that stuff together. And I just beat myself up because we want to do the best for our children, but I did what I was taught to do. My mother was, very strict and ruled with an iron hand. I came on and said, I'm not going to be that kind of mother. I'm going to be, I'm going to discuss and all. But then there were some times, Mary, I mean, I had that good part, but there were times when that part of me, I was very, very rigid. And, they grew up, all turned out to be great, great,
Yeah.
the professionals and all that. But, we had to go through some things, to get some things out and express some things so that they could realize their full potential. So, with your program, what I love about that is there's an opportunity. You know how they say you don't always choose your parents, but sometimes
Mhm.
you choose a person to parent you, you know? So in a case like yours, what are you doing? You're teaching these young people and maybe sometimes even their parents, how to turn the table around. You
Oh
know what
yeah, I've had parents come in. I've had parents come in. One lady, though, she came to see about my program because she wanted to bring her 12-year-old who had just had a baby to my program.
I mean?
But she never brought the young lady. She came to check it out, so she stayed. And she did my whole program because she had one baby she had just had, and then then her daughter had a baby. And so I said, yeah, you can do the program. So she was saying that she had to get a job because she had 6 children, and now her daughter has a child as well. So she needed a job. And I said, okay. And she said, well, one of my friends said that there's an opening at this job, at this store down the street, but I don't like being in management, and it's for an assistant manager. So I had asked her and the other girls, say when opportunity knocks. I said, when opportunity knocks, what do you tell your kids? She said, I tell them to open the door. I said, oh, okay. So you have an opportunity. Now, what are you going to do? And she said, oh, okay. So she went and took the job. Okay, the job was down the street. And there was a movie being um, made, and they needed items to go in their store. So the manager had left her in charge on her first day to go to a meeting. So when the manager came back, she said, "What happened to the store?" Because it was almost empty. Because the movie people, they came up and they just about cleared out the store to go in the movie. Okay. And so the lady was just excited. She said, nothing has ever happened like this. She got calling all the other stores and stuff. And then everybody went, Esther, can she come up here? We need her. And then she came back to the class the next week. I said, okay, so how did your first day go? She said, you won't believe it, Miss Mary. She said, everybody wants me now to come to their store because they think I can do something and do this and do that. And then I said, well, see, you never would have found out what you could do until you got out there and made that step. And I said, now you have something to talk to your kids about. Not only do you say things, you live it. And then she was so happy. And then 3 months later, because that was the ninth session, so then there was the 10th session. So that was next to the last session. So 3 months later, she called me. She said, Miss Mary, I said, what? She said, I'm a doula. That's what she wanted to be. I said, oh, okay. Because if she hadn't, her opportunity was to work at that store. But she also saw that she could also be a doula, which is, the woman that take the
Yeah,
babies be
absolutely.
born into the bathtub. Yeah, she did. So she did because she was afraid to do it. I said, well, you don't expect your kids to live up to their expectation if you don't show them that you can live up to yours. So then that was it. And so the classes aren't just for teen mothers, they for anybody that want to come. So that's the way I lead. And
You just gave her that
so
little nudge. And you know what,
yeah.
Mary? So here's the thing. Like I always
Mm-hmm.
tell people, I live my life, I live out of the spiritual realm. And,
Yeah.
like the thing right now, there's so much craziness going on. People are hating each other and I mean,
Yeah.
diminishing and denigrating, and people are fighting and there's wars. I mean, this is it. And you hear people with the signs, the guys, the world is ending. Well, we are actually in a transition. That is the truth. And the thing that's going to we're not going to transition. Those of us who really want to transition to a higher realm aren't going to do that being distracted and involved with all of this hate and anger thing. The thing that creates positivity, success, and a higher vibration is one simple thing. It's so simple, but it is true, and that is love.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get out of that fear, because fear suppresses us. It holds us back. That's why we as a culture, and many other cultures that have been under the tyranny, of these dictators or whatever, they are so afraid. They don't realize their power. And so these examples that you're giving is you are realizing, not even realizing that you're just doing it out of pure love of helping, because this is your lot in life. Mine is, like wellness and healthcare and disseminating information. That is your lot. And so, sometimes we are living, kind of semi living within our spiritual duty,
Yeah.
and I know I'm not like I'm not necessarily talking about Christian or church or anything like that. I'm talking about our soul contract, who
Yeah.
we said we wanted to be when we came here, what we wanted to contribute. And, everybody has one. And even the ones that are doing the worst was
Sorry about that.
that was track to come in and stir up mess so that people could start waking up, you know? So it's,
Yeah.
like I really can get the magnitude of what you're doing and just talking to people, just it's not even like super major. And like you said, it's not even that hard. It's just, encouraging someone. Don't be afraid, because that
Mm-hmm.
will stop you in your tracks. And look at the example you're setting for your children. How are you going to teach them to do anything if you are holding on to your fear? You know,
Yeah.
I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
was looking at I was looking at this show that I look at about um, I can't remember the name of it. It's about soul contracts and that. And there was a woman
Mm-hmm.
there who is now in she is a spiritual channeler or something like that. He talks about when he asked her, well, how long have you been doing this? So people start out very young. They have ability.
Yeah.
They don't realize they have abilities. So she's like 7 or something, and she's in church, and the preacher is preaching, and she just yells out, little, white blue-eyed girl. She just yells out, "That's not true." And her grandma was sitting next to her, and she was mortified. She said her grandmother had little white gloves on, and she grabbed her and kind of shook her, and she just kept saying, "But that's not true." And so the grandmother grabbed her and was walking through the pews, and the whole time that she was walking through the pews, she was saying, "But that's not true. That's not true." Here is a young girl that is in touch with her spirituality, her soul crime, but she's a baby, so she doesn't really recognize that. And because she had, that was her lot. That's what she had chosen. As she grew up, she tried to deny it, suppress it. She got into drugs. She did everything she could to get rid of the voices, until one day she met a woman, an older woman that was a teacher. And she said,
Mm-hmm.
I want to give you one-on-one lessons. And that woman opened up a whole new world for this girl. And now she is one of the many, spiritual leaders that is leading the world into the new paradigm.
Yeah.
She talks to spirits, and everybody has a specific gift. You know what I mean? I relate.
Mm-hmm.
Ever had, like as a young person, anything like that happen to you? Like maybe in
Uh,
at a
yeah, what happened is I was talking to this lady brought her daughter in. She brought two daughters in. And I told her to take the one that she thought should do my class. I told her she should take her to the doctor, to the hospital, because what was wrong with her was something they did. And then her other daughter, she didn't. She just came with them, but she all of a sudden, being in the atmosphere, she just started to cry and just started to cry. And so I said, okay, so what's wrong? She said, well, I have a friend, and she keeps putting these negative things on Facebook about me. I said, "Man, well, tell me about your friend." Well, we had let her come and live with us when she was she was pregnant, and then she moved out, and now she's living in an apartment. I mean, living in somewhere with this guy. I said, "Oh, okay." And I said, what's been, what's she been writing? And the things that she told me that had been written was not what I thought that girl would say about her because they were family. She was
Mm,
just with some boy out the street. I said, you know what that sounds like to me? And she said, no, ma'am. I said, he doesn't have anywhere to live. And if she come back and live with you all, he's going to be out on the street. And she said, oh, I never thought of that. I said, that doesn't sound, I don't even know what she said, but I said, that doesn't sound like she would be saying that. And so she was crying and she said, I'm trying to get a job out to help my mama. And so if she come back, I can help her too. I said, okay, so I'll see you and your mom next Tuesday. And I called her. She said, yeah, and they left. And I called her on Monday and I said, you all coming back to Nara? No, ma'am. Everything is okay now, Mom. I mean, Miss Mary, I forgave her, and she moved back in with us with the baby, and I got a job, and I start tomorrow, and it was all. They just had to let all of that go. She just had to let all of that go.
mm.
And it didn't even take 7 days because it wasn't Tuesday again, But that's people don't know,
That's the
and it's just
thing.
like
If
that.
we could just impress upon these young people that they are the captains of their ships, and
Yep.
it doesn't matter what it looks like, what's going on out there, you have the power to
Yeah.
be whatever you want to be. Don't let anything stop you. Because,
Exactly.
Mary, like when we were coming up, we didn't, we knew, like I knew I wanted to be a doctor, I was going to be a doctor. Or when I finally graduated and I wanted to open up my own practice, I went to so many banks, little black girl with a little briefcase, heels and stuff, and I got so many no's. But you know what I said? I walked out of one bank and I was like, you know what? Somebody is going to give me that money. And I'm going to keep on until I get the money to renovate my. And I walked into a bank and all the banks were white, so being a black and female, I had that. But I just felt like I was going to succeed, and the
Mhm.
person that was going to listen to me was going to go along for the ride to succeed with me. And I went into this little small white branch, and I gave them, had my business plan out, and I asked for the certain amount of money, and they said, well, you don't have any collateral or anything. So, because I had, didn't, had just bought my building. And so they said, but you know what? We're not going to give you that much. We're going to give you this much. And if you think you could work with this, I said, I can work with that. And I signed those papers and I walked out of that bank with the
Yeah.
money to do my renovation and all. And from that point on, I was able to do what I wanted to do with my business. When I wanted to create this fabulous business, it was like a $500,000 business. But I was just like,
Mhm.
okay, that's nothing but a thing. I work hard. I'll be able to pay that back in 5 years. I got the, state of the art equipment. And Mary, it just all came to me. But I went out with that attitude. That I can attitude. What, why are our children today in this generation, they just, I don't want to like denigrate them or disparage them, but they just don't seem to, like have that same thing. And where I want to take us is, what do we do? What can we do? One of the things is the program that you're doing. The language is another. You said, how you talk to people, you talk to them with encouragement and let them know they can do it. And we like to tell stories too. It's like, well, when back in the day, I used to walk 10 miles. They don't want to hear that. I used to walk 10 miles to school and 10 miles back. But we got there and we just do that to encourage them. So today they're not listening to that. What are they going to listen to?
Yeah. Yeah. And that same lady with one of her kids, he was 5 years old, and they said, well, Mom, he doesn't want to play with us. He doesn't want to do what I say and all this kind of stuff. She said, well, Miss Mary, can I bring him up here? I said, sure, you can bring him up here. And I said, he can sit over there, bring him a toy. And so she brought him. He sit in the corner. Next thing I know, he was crawling around on the floor looking at the wire that was going to the machine over there. I said, okay, you can look at it with your eyes, but don't touch it with your hand. Then you're going to light up. He looked back and kind of laughed. And he went all the way around the room. And so I said, do you ever talk to him? She said, no. I said, one day when you cooking dinner, call him back in there way through in the kitchen. Tell him to sit down at the table and tell you something. And she said, okay, Miss Mary. I said, okay. So next week or the 2 weeks, I forgot that I didn't ask her the first week. So I asked her maybe 2 weeks later. I said, did you do what I asked you to do? She said, yes, ma'am. And she said, Miss Mary, that boy know all these big words. He talking about stuff I never thought about. She said, his mentality is over the rest of the kids. And I said, yeah, that's why he doesn't want to roll around on the floor and roll a ball and all that. I said, that boy is thinking out of the box for a 5-year-old. And I say, so you treat him like that. Take him to the store and ask him what he wants to play with, what he wants. I say, because it's not going to be that ball or a little squeaky toy. I said, he's going to want something that can help him think the way he thinks. And she said, oh. I said, that's what people do. You know, they think if the all and look whatever else is there, then they think he is wrong. Yo, you find out who he is.
So yeah. So again, it just as I'm listening to you, it just goes back to it's not that deep. It's really simple. But when we're looking for the answers, we're looking for something like major, like I said, what can we say? What can we do to get
like
them to listen?
From something's wrong. There's nothing wrong.
Like something's wrong.
That's where people look from. There's something wrong. Yeah.
So just sum up, like your approach when you're dealing with these teenagers. Again, just sum it up, the things that you go over, the things that you want to impart or impress upon them. And it's just like simple. You just share a bit of information and then you allow their brains, their intellect to take over, their integrity. You just put it out there simplistically, and then you give them the opportunity to let that flower and grow. Sum that up for me real quick before we.
Okay. Well, the self-integrity is you treat yourself the way you want others to treat you. So you keep your integrity in. If you say, I'm going to see you at 2:00 and you can't make it to 3, call them and let them know you'll be late.
Right.
Don't just think, they'll wait on us. No. And then the self-commitment, you live your life in a way where you're committed to being what you say. Because people say, well, I do this and I do that. And then they say, oh, he didn't believe it anyway. No, you live your life. You let people know that you are committed to who you are as a person. And then they will acknowledge you as being committed to yourself. Because if you're committed to yourself, then they believe you're committed to them as well. So that's to be a commitment. And then the self-empowerment. You just create rules for yourself to empower yourself. Yeah. Like, okay, so I wore a yellow ribbon and when I graduated from high school. Okay, so here it is 42 years later. I want a yellow ribbon. That's all I want. Now, I enrolled in college.
So what's you said you wore a yellow ribbon when you graduated from high school. Symbolic of what now?
Honor student. I was an honor student. Honor roll, you wear the yellow ribbon.
Okay.
So that's what I wanted to do. And I was out of college. So I went to a 2-year college. I went to Savannah College down in Savannah, of course. And I read, I committed to going. Next thing I know, this little white boy, excuse me, but this little boy was on was calling me up, and he said, "Okay, so you're enrolled in college, and I'm the person that's supposed to make sure that you know what you're supposed to do." I said, "Oh, okay, okay." And so I did call the college, I guess, but I said, okay. And so he told me the classes and all that kind of stuff, and set me up. And I said, okay, that's good. And then I started to school, and I flunked algebra because they put that X in algebra. And when I went to school, because I went to an all black school back in the 50s and the 60s, they didn't have that
Mm,
X. So,
mm,
but I could do the problem because that was just something they added to complicate as far as I
mm,
was concerned. And he said,
mm-hmm.
"Well, you come up with the answer, but you're going to have to come up with the answer using doing it the way I want you to do it. I'm going to flunk you, flunk me, and it never occurred to me that I was going to have to pay that $2,500 again." So the phone rang. I answered the phone. They said, "Well, I just want to let you know that the school isn't going to charge you the $2,500 for the second time. You just go and get tutored on Wednesday for an hour." I said, "Okay." And so then I did that. I plagiarized. I didn't know about plagiarizing. I didn't know if you told me to look in the encyclopedia and or look online and find something. I didn't know that I couldn't write it word for word because I
Mm.
didn't. We didn't have that in black school. So then the would just call me and say, "Just put it in your words. Your words will probably sound better anyway." And so I did. So they didn't flunk me.
Okay.
I graduated after being out of school 40 some years, and I graduated cum laude, and I didn't even know because I didn't know that little gold thing on my diploma or whatever they call it was meant that that's what it was. To a friend come up to me, "What was your GPA?" I said, "I don't know. I just know I got the yellow ribbon." And he said, "You graduated cum laude," and they put me in some kind of society. I still have the thing. I'm supposed to put it on my windshield, so I was told. So, and I did all that because I didn't know I couldn't. And I had a young lady after I told her about I didn't know algebra. She did my algebra. She supported me the whole 2 years.
Mm.
A payment. She wouldn't let me pay her. And so I said, "Well, all right then."
Now, I
So,
want you to just say that. I want you to say it slowly so the
okay.
audience can get it. I
Okay.
did that. Just say that phrase real slow. I did that because you didn't
Uh,
know what now? Say that again. You said, I just did that because I didn't know I couldn't. Say it
yeah, yeah.
slowly and clearly.
Oh, yeah. I did what I did because I didn't know I couldn't. And you know what? This is it. I wanted the yellow rope around my neck.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that stuff that happened, it didn't even occur to me that I wouldn't get my yellow rope. I even there were some young teachers. We had to write a lot of papers, and I asked the teacher. I said, "Okay, I see you. Sometimes you have this little thing up there, and you circle stuff when it's wrong." And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, will you show me how to do that so I can go through here and read it and help these people get a better grade on what they're writing?" And she said, "Sure." See, I made straight A's on all of mine, what
Mm-hmm.
stuff I wrote. And I wanted to do that. And I was looking for how I could keep the grade up. And then I don't know, it came from somewhere that the last line of the paragraph supposed to introduce the first line of the next paragraph. And then I was A's all the way out, and they was
Mm-hmm.
telling me, that I should write for a magazine, all kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
because one of the things I didn't know I couldn't do that, and so that's what I tell these girls. I say, "You can go to college and graduate cum laude too." I said,
Yeah.
"Shoot," and
So
I got
you don't let your mind get cluttered with all of that excess stuff. What you did, at the end of the day, you
Mhm.
kept your eye on the prize, and the prize for you was that yellow cord. You just like
Yeah.
that yellow ribbon. You like that.
Yep.
And so you didn't
Yep.
get bothered with all of the other stuff. If that stuff happened, it didn't deter you, defer you, stop you.
Never thought about
I was on the prize. And at the end of the day, you got that prize.
it.
Message
And guess what?
with our audience. Keep your eye on the prize.
Because we've heard that a lot of times, didn't know what it meant.
Hmm.
Keep your eyes on the prize, and whatever happened from the time you want the prize to the time you get the prize, you just keep it out there on the prize.
Yeah.
And what's
Yeah.
happening in here?
And don't let
Really,
that stuff stop you, deter you, or make you think you can't. So
there
that's
you
the important thing. And then they need to have a prize. They need to have something that they're so passionate about. Surely everybody knows that they want something in the world or that they are here for some purpose. So,
Mhm.
figure out your purpose. Figure
Yeah,
out where it is you want to go. It doesn't really matter. There are no wrong answers, right? And then
exactly.
maintain integrity. Be
Mhm.
your word, because you have nothing. The most powerful and valuable thing that you have in your life is your word and your integrity.
Yep, that's what you have.
And just treat others as you want to be treated. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can tell people. I mean, you might have made an F right here, but that doesn't stop you. Go get somebody to help you to make an A.
Right.
That's what you do. You don't just get all upset and stop doing what you were doing because you made, a flunk the class. Like I say, I never even thought about paying $2,500 more. It never occurred to me. I just, I said, okay, I'm just gonna go find. And this, I was working at the IRS at the time, so I
Uh-huh.
would go out there just being silly. But this way, I went out there in the hall
Uh-huh.
when people were in the hall. I said, "There anybody in here who knows algebra and can tell me how to fix that X?"
Hey,
And then she walked up to me. She said, "Miss Mary, I help you." Well, somebody I didn't even know. She knew my
yeah,
name, but we didn't know each other. She said, "I help you the whole 2 years for free."
there
I
you
said,
go. See, you and I, we have that moxie. We'll do that kind of thing. But you have the shy people that won't do that. But still, this applies to them as well.
yeah,
Know who you are, where you want to go. And once you establish that, don't let anything get in your way. Do things with love and
mm-hmm.
consideration. Have no fear, and just, have integrity about the
Yeah.
things that you do. Don't let anything stop you. Miss Mary, this has been enlightening.
Okay, did I tell you the last thing? So I said you have self integrity, self commitment, and self empowerment. That's the
Right.
last thing. Empower yourself to get to whatever it is you want to have happen in your life. And
That's
that's
it,
what you
girl.
do.
There.
That's what you do.
This has been and I hope that there are young people that can hear this wisdom
Yeah.
and gain from it, because the world is changing and you're either going to evolve and go in this direction, or you're going to stay down here on this earth and keep on with this nonsense.
Mhm.
I plan on meeting you up there on the new earth.
I know that's right.
So that's right.
Mhm.
So much for, like,
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you. Yeah.